When I say the War of the Pacific, most of you will think about the Second World War against Japan in the Pacific. But here in Peru, it means something else. The War of the Pacific was fought against Chile, together with Bolivia at the end of the 19th century. And let me tell you, Peru lost big time as the Chilean army occupied the Peruvian capital, Lima, and sacked the city. I'm here on Fortaleza Real Felipe, which was one of the only strongholds surrounding Lima the Chilean army did not capture. But they basically captured anything else. This here is the story of the forgotten War of the Pacific. Peru and Bolivia versus Chile. Keep watching. The war with Chile actually started with a dispute between Chile and Bolivia. It started with the Bolivian president Hilario Lagos in 1878 tried to seize the Chilean-owned nitrate-producing enterprises in the Antofagasta region of the Atacama Desert. Nitrate is also known as saltpeter. It is a chemical compound that is used for all sort of things I'm not going to get into because I'm not a chemist. And the war is sometimes also referred to as the Saltpeter War, although to be frank, War of the Pacific sounds way more epic. Now the region we're talking about belonged to Bolivia, but there were many Chilean-owned companies located there. This prompted Chile to react. Bolivia had a treaty with Peru, and therefore, because of this defensive alliance, Peru got drawn into the war. Neither Peru nor Bolivia had any idea what they gotten themselves into, because their armies were not ready for war. Neither country's commanders had serious training, and most soldiers were Quechua-speaking natives, sometimes referred to as Indians, that lacked training and motivation. Peru did have a navy, but most of its warships were obsolete and no match for the Chilean navy. Looking at Chile, this was a much more cohesive country with a strong national sentiment. But this was very much lacking in fractious countries as Peru and Bolivia, where people were physically divided due to the enormous distances and the landscape, and there was a big cultural chasm between the native and non-native populations. The War of the Pacific was a war over resources, although territorial rivalry was its most immediate cause. The conflict also involved geopolitics, economic rivalry, greed, corruption, and personal ambitions. The war started with naval engagements. The biggest battle was the Battle of Iquique Bay in May 1879, when the Chileans defeated the Peruvian navy, and this gave Chile control over the sea routes of the Pacific coast. Hence the war is called the War of the Pacific, because these sea routes were very vital. Transporting troops over land was next to impossible due to the enormous distances, the harsh terrain, and the poor roads. Therefore, troops had to be transported by ship, and those who controlled the sea lanes had the key of victory in hands to transport men and material to the critical areas. The Chileans could now also impose blockades on their enemies. As a result, Chile was victorious on land as well. The Peruvian and Bolivian armies attempted to defend the southern nitrate provinces of Arica, Tacna, and Tarapacá. In Tacna and Arica, they were defeated by the Chileans. During the Battle of Arica, Peruvian Colonel Alfonso Ugarte was ordered to fight to the last bullet. When the battle seemed lost, he rode his horse off the cliff, preventing the Peruvian flag to fall in the hands of the Chileans. Bolivian President Daza deserted his armies and fled the country. The Peruvian president, Mariano Ignacio Prado, left for Europe. He claimed he was going to seek help there, but he saw the writing on the wall and de facto deserted. What followed was a bunch of competing politicians trying to seize power over Peru. The US mediated peace talks with the countries, but when these broke down, the Chileans landed a huge army south of Lima, the Peruvian capital. In the suburbs of San Juan and Miraflores, bloody battles took place. A Chilean correspondent noted, Peruvians, far from withdrawn, fought desperately as they defended the last bulwarks that stood between the Chilean army and its victorious march on the old capital of the Incas and the viceroys. And right now I'm in a peaceful park here in Miraflores. Now imagine that back in the day, this park was just an open field and Miraflores was just a fishing village without much significance. But during the War of the Pacific, this place was significant, as right here on this very spot, the Peruvian army made a last-ditch attempt to stop the Chileans from advancing on their capital city, Lima. Soldier Juan Fanning led the troops and fought till the last bullet and died here in Miraflores, defending his country. And despite the Peruvians putting up brave resistance against overwhelming odds, they were not able to halt the Chilean advance, as the Chileans marched further towards the Peruvian capital, and eventually they captured it. Many inhabitants of Lima saw what was coming, and they desperately tried to seek shelter against vandalism and anarchy. Many tried to seek shelter in British and French embassies. Foreign shops, they hung out foreign flags, hoping their shop would not be looted. It happened anyway, and initially not by the Chileans. Before the Chilean army entered the city, looting already began by Peruvians. Some observers made the comparison with what happened during the days of the Paris Commune. The Peruvian police used force to restore order, and the men of the Peruvian Navy, they burned down their ships so these would not fall in the hands of the Chileans. In the afternoon on the 22nd of January 1881, the first Chilean troops entered the capital of Lima. Initially, the impression of the Chilean occupiers wasn't that bad, as a Colombian resident noted. The army of Chile made its entrance into the capital with a moderation that plainly shows the discipline of the soldiers and the sensitivity of its officers. But discipline quickly evaporated as the Chileans thoroughly sacked the city. The National Library was looted, and even animals of the zoo were taken away. Residents had their property stolen. Both Peruvians and Chileans looted from the living and the dead. Additional factors made the city close to unbearable. The thousands of flies, the sight of 700 wild dogs feasting on the remains of the glorious dead, the aroma of the still scattered, half-burned, decomposing and putrefying bodies of the soldiers, as well as their horses, made worse by the summer heat that filled the capital's air with an unbearable stench. Many parts of Peru descended into chaos. See, Chilean officials were ordered not to intervene with the native population, claiming that this was not their war. And as a result, racial tensions came to a burst. Native peasants attacked the rich landowners on their farms, and Lima's masses attacked Chinese stores in the city. This all demonstrated the lack of Peruvian cohesiveness. The chaos continued for years. Now, Chile, with the Peruvian capital in hands, hoped that Peru would sue for peace, but Peru did not. Well, it depends on what we mean when I say Peru, because national order was gone. Nicolás Piarola, who had ousted the vice president and proclaimed himself president in December 1879, continued to fight. In some areas of the country, different ethnic groups joined forces to fight against the Chileans. The Chileans put in place a collaborationist government under the lawyer Francisco García Calderón and declared Lima as neutral territory for him to set up his government. Calderón did not enjoy widespread support. With US mediation, peace talks began. Calderón proved to be a tough negotiator. He was willing to pay war reparations, but he refused to cede land to Chile. As a result, the Chileans disbanded his government, and Calderón was shipped off to Chile. Piarola gave up the struggle and left for Europe. Now Admiral Lizardo Montero declared himself president of his base in Arequipa, yet his rival General Andrés Cáceres organized resistance forces from the highlands. Cáceres had hidden in Lima for 3 months to recover from wounds sustained in the Battle of Miraflores. In April 1881, he escaped the capital and fled to the highlands to join forces with Piarola. In the following years, he had managed to build up an army of 5,000 men, and he fought off the Chileans during different engagements in the Central Highlands. This made them pull back to Lima. Cáceres was a military talent, but not only that, he spoke the native tongue. He spoke Quechua, and therefore he managed to gain the support of many natives, who sometimes refer to him as father or protector. Yet, despite these successes, Cáceres' armies were not able to withstand new Chilean offensives. Competition from within emerged, and yet another claimant of Peruvian leadership entered the scene. Miguel Iglesias. He was recognized by the Chileans because it was believed he would settle for peace, and in October he signed the Treaty of Ancón, which technically ended the War of the Pacific. Under the terms of the treaty, Peru gave up the Tarapacá province immediately. Chile was to administer Tacna and Arica for 10 years, at which point a vote of the people of these provinces would determine the country they belonged to. The loser would receive 10 million pesos as compensation. Through the treaty, the Chileans not only got Peru's rich nitrate fields, but also its remaining guano reserves. And this technically ended the War of the Pacific, but it did not end the violence. Cáceres was angry with Iglesias because he had signed the treaty, and thus Cáceres made his men move north to engage him in battle. Now, the Chileans, they intervened, they mustered their troops to defend Iglesias. Cáceres' remaining troops were defeated at the Battle of Huamachuco in July 1883. In the meanwhile, Admiral Montero set up his Peruvian government in Arequipa, where he stayed till the Chilean forces reached the city, after which he fled the country. Civil strife didn't end there. Cáceres and Iglesias' troops engaged each other in battle. Iglesias was defeated in December 1883, and the following year Cáceres was elected president. He demanded the Chileans to leave Peru and let the Peruvians sort out their internal disputes. The last Chilean troops left Peru in August 1884, leaving the country economically and politically bankrupt. How many people died during this war is hard to say. Data is lacking, and a lot of people who got wounded in the battle is not known if they succumbed to their wounds later. But here are some rough estimates. Peru had around 25,000 killed and wounded in action, Chile around 10,000 killed in action or wounded in action. The conflict left Bolivia landlocked, and subsequent negotiations and treaties failed to restore its access to the sea. The dispute is still ongoing. Bolivia has the desire to regain the corridor to the Pacific, allowing the country to have its own maritime territory. Despite various efforts over the years, the agreement remains unsolved, contributing to ongoing tensions between Bolivia and Chile. Bolivia brought the territorial dispute in 2013 to the International Court of Justice in The Hague. In 2018, the UN ruled in Chile's favor. After Chile left, Peru entered a period that was known as a national reconstruction, where the country was to be rebuilt. One region, the Tarata department, was ceded back to Peru in 1925. Two other areas, Tacna and Arica, was agreed upon in 1929, with Tacna being returned to Peru and Arica to Chile. In spite of Peru's loss, the country recovered, and the last years of the 19th century brought Peru closer to its goal of modernization, by establishing new patterns of trade and regional economic enterprise. Yet the war left a trauma, and there is still some animosity among Peruvians towards Chileans till this day. Peruvian writer Manuel Gonzalez wrote the following about the war in 1894. When man leaves behind his atavistic ferociousness, war will be remembered as a prehistoric barbarity, and famous and admired warriors of today will figure in a sinister gallery of the devil's children by the side of assassins, executioners, and butchers. If you want to learn more about Peruvian history, click here. Thanks for watching, and adios.